Thank you very much, and thanks to the Board of Governors of the Commonwealth Club for inviting me tonight. I'm just delighted to be here. And what I thought I might do is tell you a little bit about myself. I've not met many of you before. And then tell you why I'm running for governor and the vision that I have for what California can become. And everyone, almost the first question I get when I meet a group of people is, why does anyone want this job? So I'll tell you about that. And then give you a quick update on the status of the race. And then I'd love to answer questions moderated by Jeff. So, as you mentioned, just quickly, I was born and raised on Long Island. I'm the youngest of 3 children. And I am a product of the public school system. I went to K through 12 public school. And I have a passion for public education, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. My dad worked in New York, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, although I think in a very adventurous stay-at-home mom. And you know what she instilled in me? She instilled in me a bias for action. She used to say, Meg, the price of inaction is far greater than the cost of making a mistake. And she told us stories growing up that really embedded that in who we were as children. And I'll share one story with you that I think you will appreciate. So during World War II, my mother wanted to contribute to the war effort like so many of her generation. So she did what was available to women at the time, which is she joined the Red Cross in Boston. And I think she thought she'd stay in Boston, it would be quite safe and easy. But on that first day, they said, actually, we need this class of women to go to New Guinea in the South Pacific. So she flew from Boston to San Francisco, then got on a troop ship for 30 days to New Guinea. She said the very best thing about that was that she got seasick and lost 30 pounds. But she arrived in New Guinea, and the base commander said, we have a shortage of airplane mechanics and truck mechanics. Which of you women would like to volunteer? My mother raised her hand. My mother had never looked under the hood of anything. But she knew where the need was greatest, and really the challenge fueled her. And 4 years later, she was a fully certified airplane mechanic and a fully certified truck mechanic. And she told us children, she said, you can do anything you want because I can overhaul a Jeep engine faster than the men. I was lucky enough to be in just the 4th class of women to attend Princeton University. There were about 100 of us in a class of 1,200, and we had a great time for a whole variety of reasons. Then went on to Harvard Business School, and then of course ended up in California. And I'll tell you a funny story. So my husband needed to pick a city to do 7 years of neurosurgery residency, and that's my husband, Brooke Harsh, over there. If you could just... He got into 2 training programs. He got into the University of California at San Francisco and Harvard's teaching hospital, the Mass General. And he looked at me with a little twinkle in his eye. He said, Meg, your mother lives in Boston. We should go to California. And so as newlyweds, we decamped to the Haight-Ashbury, below UCSF. And we fell in love with California from the beginning. We loved every minute of our time living in San Francisco and in California. And I started my first job in California, which was actually for Bain & Company, the management consulting firm. And the reason that you will care about that is my first boss, and my boss for most of the 10 years I worked there was actually Mitt Romney. And that, of course, is how I ended up working on his presidential campaign many years later. I had the opportunity to work for some great companies in California. Our 2 boys were born here. We now have a 25-year-old and a 22-year-old, 2 boys. But you can imagine that the job that changed my way of thinking more than just about anything else was eBay. And Michael's exactly right. I joined eBay as a tiny little startup. I joined a founder by the name of Pierre Omidyar, a Persian American, who had started eBay in 1995. And by the time 1997 rolled around, he was looking for a CEO. He was a computer scientist. And eBay was growing at 70% compound monthly growth rate. Meaning every month the company was 70% bigger than the month before. And so he needed help to run the company. And I came out really very skeptical. I thought, I don't know, this may not work out, I'm not sure. But after a day with Pierre, I was taken by the power of the internet and the power of what he had created. Because what Pierre had created, of course, was a level playing field, where your next door neighbor had an equal chance of success to a large corporation. We created the conditions for small businesses to grow and thrive. And I saw that on the day that I met Pierre. And at the end of the day, I said to him, what are you looking for in a CEO? And I thought he might say financial acumen, strategic capability, leadership. And he looked at me with a little twinkle in his eye, and he said, adult supervision. Because Pierre was only 29 years old, and he was the oldest person in the company. But as someone who could say that, Pierre did not need adult supervision. He was 29 going on 40, one of the most remarkable entrepreneurs that I have ever met, and we're still good and close friends. In any case, we had the opportunity to build eBay from 30 people to 15,000 employees, from $4.7 million in revenue to nearly $8 billion in revenue. But I think the fact that I am most proud of is that today, well over 1 million individuals make most, if not all, of their living selling on eBay around the globe. And eBay became the platform for small businesses on the internet. And what I saw every day was the power of small business, the courage, the inspiration, the challenges that small business people face. Was startling to me, but it was a remarkable experience. And I also saw how the government can get in the way of small business: taxation, bureaucracy, and regulation. And we had sellers in all 50 states, and I can tell you firsthand, this is one of the most difficult states in the country in which to do business. I saw it every single day. So that experience, combined with the experience that I had working on Mitt Romney's team and John McCain's team, inspired me in many ways to think beyond a career in business to serving the public, to serving in the public good. And no matter what you think about John McCain and Mitt Romney's politics or their campaigns, they're both great Americans. They're great patriots, and they were running for the right reason. So those experiences, combined with what I saw happening to this state I love. I love California. It's where my two boys were born. Griff was trained to be a doctor here. It was where eBay was born. And California has historically been an inspiration to the United States and to the world. And when I saw what was happening to this state, I had to sit back and I said, you know what? I just refuse to believe that California cannot be better than it is. What has happened to this state over the last decade or so is simply remarkable. And you know the statistics. Today we have a 12.4% unemployment rate, which is about 4th highest in the nation. The underemployment rate, meaning people who are working 30 hours a week who'd like to be working 40, or people who have given up looking for work, is now closer to 17%. I see the heartbreak on the campaign trail every single day. Kids who can't go back to UC because fees have gone up by 32% and one of their parents has lost a job. I was down at the largest John Deere dealership in Southern California. They are laying off people who have worked for their company for 30 years. Husbands telling wives, wives telling husbands they can't hang on to a house they bought just 2 or 3 years ago because one of them has lost a job. So we have an enormous challenge on our hands, and I'll come back to that in a moment. We have an infrastructure that was built for a population half our size. The water crisis in the Central Valley is the best exhibit of this. Third, we have a kindergarten through 12th grade education system that is now near the bottom of the pack. In the 1950s, we had among the very best public school systems in the country. Today, we are close to the bottom. And this is simply not acceptable. If we do not fix this, we're going to end up with a second-rate workforce in a second-rate state. And then last but not least, we have a fiscal crisis on our hands. The state is a fiscal mess. We are now facing yet another budget deficit, this time $20 billion over the next 18 months. So here's the approach that I want to take. We are going to have to do some things very differently if we're going to turn California around. I think we can turn California around, but here's the approach that we're going to need to take. I am a big believer in focus. Let's do 3 things at 100% as opposed to 10 things at 15 or 20%. I think that's especially true when you face the crisis that we face in California. Because if you go to Sacramento with an agenda that is too broad, you will be stymied by the legislature, by the incumbent interest, by the bureaucracy. So you've got to put every bit of enthusiasm, skill, policy against these 3 things. And here they are. First and foremost, we have to create and keep jobs in California. If we do not put Californians back to work, there is no way out of this mess. So priority number 1 has got to put Californians back to work, which means we fundamentally have to change the business climate in California. You probably know that we are bleeding jobs to Colorado, Arizona, Utah, Texas. And you know why? It's simpler and easier and cheaper to do business there. So first is creating and keeping jobs in California. Second, we've got to rein in government spending. I have done what many of you would do who are in business in the audience. I dove deeply into the financials of the state of California. And trust me when I tell you, we have a spending